What if bloating, constipation, hair shedding, difficulty losing weight, and other symptoms you have learned to live with are worth paying attention when you're looking at your fertility? In today's episode, we are talking about your gut, your microbiome, and the fertility connection you might not be thought to look for. So before you ask, what should I do next? I want you to ask yourself, what am I missing? Do you long to get pregnant and trust your body again? Do you feel exhausted by the month after month cycle of hope and disappointment? Do you carry that creeping sense of failure? The fear that your body just isn't working the way that it should? If so, I'm so glad that you're here, my friend. Hi, I'm Mariana, a wife, mom, and a fertility care practitioner. After years of confusion and heartache, I learned how to understand my cycle with clarity and move towards pregnancy naturally by following a real system instead of guessing. This is Fertile Window Lab. If you're ready for real clarity about your cycle, a simple method that works, and less pressure from predictions, alarms, and fertility gymnastics, sit down the sticks, pop in your earbuds, and let's make sense of your fertility together. For years, one of the things that I have done is teach women how to understand and track their fertility. And as you can imagine, when a woman is sitting across me, learning how to track their cycle, we're not just talking about getting pregnant. We're talking about her body. We are looking at her cycle, her fertile signs, her bleeding patterns, her cervical mucus, what's happening through the phases of her cycle, and we're often trying to answer a bigger question. What is my body telling me? And over the years, I started noticing something. Women will come into the sessions because they wanted answers about their fertility, but as we talk, other things will start coming up. They will say things like, I've been really constipated. I've been so bloated lately. My hair is falling out. I cannot lose weight no matter what I do. My skin has changed. I feel like certain foods don't agree with me anymore. And sometimes these women were also dealing with things like insulin resistance or PCOS. These symptoms weren't necessarily why they came to see me. They came because they wanted answers about their fertility. They wanted to understand what is happening in their cycles, why pregnancy hadn't happened, and what they might be missing. But these other things were happening in their bodies at the same time. And I started noticing that it wasn't just one woman saying this. It became a recurring theme. And I remember, especially in conversations around insulin resistance and PCOS, hearing women start to connect these dots themselves. They will say things like, maybe I need to work on my gut, or could my gut be part of what's going on? And I'll be honest with you, at the beginning, I was a little puzzled by it because I didn't really consider myself someone who had gut issues. And gut issues can look so different from women to women. For one woman, it's constipation. For another one, it's bloating. For another, it's food reactions. For another, it's reflux or digestive discomfort. So I wasn't walking around thinking, gut health. That's the missing piece. But I kept hearing it. And eventually something happened that made me look at this conversation very differently. It happened to me. Now I'm in my 40s. And while I'm not trying to get pregnant, so my situation was different from the women I was working with. But the lesson my body was teaching me was incredibly relevant to the women who were. Last year, I went through a season where my stress was to the roof. I was caregiving for a sick child, and the things that I always rely on to support my health, especially exercising consistently, just weren't realistic in that season. And then my body started giving me some signals. My face looked puffy. I gained 20 pounds. I was bloated. I started noticing more hair shedding. My anxiety increased. I had insomnia, especially in the days before my period. And migraines that I hadn't been dealing with for a while started coming back. And initially, I did what I think a lot of us do. I had an explanation for everything. I'm stressed. And honestly, the stress was probably part of the picture. But eventually, I had to step back and ask myself, is the stress the whole story or is it something else going on? I realized that I couldn't keep looking at my health one symptom at a time. I couldn't just say, I'm stressed. I couldn't just say, I'm in my 40s. I couldn't just say, I've gained weight. I needed to step back and ask, what is my body asking me to pay attention to? Questions sent me deeper into a relationship between hormonal health, metabolic health, and the gut. I pursued additional education and I became a certified Fast Like a Girl coach through Dr. Mindy Pell's program. And as I began applying what I was learning to my own health, I started seeing meaningful changes. But the biggest shift wasn't just what I learned about my own health. It reinforced something I've been seeing in my work with women for years. And eventually, my own body reminded me something I've been teaching in other way all along. And it's this: the body doesn't operate in compartments. Your fertility isn't disconnected from your metabolic health. Your hormones aren't disconnected from your sleep, stress, nutrition, digestion, and overall health. These systems are communicating one with one another all the time. And when you're trying to get pregnant, it is very easy to become so focused on the reproductive system that we forget to ask about the women carrying that reproductive system. And this is what I want to take you in today's conversation. Your ovulation, your progesterone, your AMH, your follicles, your fertile window, your husband's sperm. Yes, those things are important, but what if also we became curious about the rest of the women? What is happening metabolically? How are you digesting? How are you eliminating? How are you responding to food? How is your blood sugar? How are you sleeping? How is your stress? What symptoms have you simply decided are normal because you have had them for years? And listen, I'm not saying that every one of those things is causing a fertility problem. What I'm saying here is that there are pieces of information, and sometimes we need to stop dismissing that information too. So if you're listening to this and thinking, okay, Ariana, I understand what you're saying, but what does this actually mean for me? I want to make this really simple, because I don't want you to finish this episode thinking that now you have another complicated fertility protocol to follow. You don't need 17 supplements. You don't need to completely overhaul your life tomorrow. And you definitely don't need to diagnose yourself with bad gut bacteria because you heard me talk about the microbiome. Instead, I want to give you 3 simple rules for supporting your gut and in turn, supporting the larger environment in which your hormonal and reproductive health are happening. I want you to remember 3 words: feed, move, protect. Let's break them down. Rule number 1, feed your microbiome. Your first job is to feed your gut well. And when I say feed your gut, I'm not talking about buying the most expensive probiotic you can find. I'm talking about feeding the community of microbes that live inside your gastrointestinal tract. Your gut microbiome is an incredible complex ecosystem. And one of the ways we support that ecosystem is through the food that we eat, particularly a diverse range of fiber-rich plant foods. Think vegetables, fruits, legumes if you tolerate them, nuts and seeds, whole grains when appropriate for you, and a variety of different plant foods rather than eating the same 3 vegetables every week. Why? Because different types of fiber and plant compounds can interact with the microbes in your gut. And we are learning more about how microbial communities and their metabolites interact with your metabolism, immune function, and reproductive health. Research is increasingly investigating these connections in conditions like PCOS, where metabolic function, insulin resistance, inflammation, and reproductive dysfunctions can overlap. But I want to emphasize that this is an evolving area of science. We're talking about an important connection worth understanding, not a simple fix your gut and fix your fertility formula. So here's the practical takeaway for rule number 1. Start increasing the diversity of whole foods you're eating. Don't obsess over one superfood. Don't ask, what is the one food that is going to fix my hormones? Instead, ask yourself, how many different whole foods can I include regularly in my diet? And if you have significant digestive symptoms, don't assume that adding huge amounts of fiber overnight is the answer. Sometimes increasing fiber quickly can make bloating and discomfort worse. Grow gradually, pay attention to your body, and if you're having persistent digestive symptoms, that's something to discuss with a qualified health professional. So that's rule number 1. in a nutshell. Feed your microbiome. Rule number 2, keep things moving. Yes, I'm talking about your bowel movements. Number 2, because one of the most common things I hear women say is, I'm constipated. Or I go every other day or once a week or every 3 days. And then they say it like it's just a personality trait. That is just how my body is. I don't want you to simply normalize it. I want you to get curious about it. Your gastrointestinal tract is not just a tube that carries food from one end to another one. It is part of a very active ecosystem involving digestion, nutrient absorption, immune function, and communication through the body. And when we are talking about hormonal health, we also care about what happens to hormones metabolized after the body has used them. The liver and the gastrointestinal tract are involved in hormone metabolism and elimination. But again, this is a process, not a simple detox switch. Your body already has a sophisticated system for processing and eliminating compounds. Our job isn't to detox ourselves with a magic food. Our job is to support normal physiology. So what does that look like? First, pay attention to your bowel habits. Are you regularly constipated? Are your stools unusually hard? Do you routinely go several days without a bowel movement? Are you chronically bloated? Those are the things that I don't want you to simply dismiss. Then, second thing is that I want you to look at the basics. Are you drinking enough fluids? Are you eating enough fiber? Are you moving your body? Are you sitting all day? Are you suddenly eating an enormous amount of fiber because you heard fiber is good for your gut? Because again, more isn't always better. Your body needs the right amount for you, and movement matters here too. Walking after meals can be a simple habit. Regular physical activity supports metabolic health, and metabolic health is highly relevant when we're talking about fertility. This becomes, again, especially important for women dealing with insulin resistance or PCOS. So remember, the second rule is keep things moving because regular movement can support digestion, bowel function, and metabolic health. And now let's get to rule number 3. The third rule is protect your gut because we're not just talking about what you add, we're also talking about what you're constantly exposing your body to. And this is what I want you to think about your overall health because when we're trying to conceive, I don't want you to only ask what you need to add to your fertility routine. I want you to ask what might be continually working against the health you're trying to build. Your microbiome is influenced by many factors, including diet, medications, lifestyle, and environment. And we are learning more about how changes in the gut microbiome can interact with metabolic and immune pathways. I don't want you leaving this episode afraid of everything. This isn't about creating a perfect sterile lifestyle. It's about reducing unnecessary disruption as much as you can. So start with obvious things. Look at how much your diet is highly processed. Look at how much added sugar you're consuming. Look at alcohol if you drink. Look at whether you're sleeping enough. Look at your stress. Look at how much movement you're getting. And medications matter too. But please hear me on this. I'm not telling you to stop taking medications because you heard me talk about gut health. Antibiotics, medications, and medical treatments have important and sometimes life-saving roles. The question is not how to avoid all medications. The question is, am I using what I need under appropriate medical guidance while I'm also taking care of the health of my body? My friend, that is a very different conversation. And I think this is where women get really overwhelmed. They hear gut health and suddenly they have a list of 30 things they're afraid of. I don't want that for you. I want you to focus on the things you actually have some control over. Eat real food, eat a variety of foods, move your body, support digestion, get enough sleep, manage stress when you can. And when something isn't working well, don't just keep covering up the symptom. Get curious. Again, the goal here is simplicity. If you remember nothing else from today's episode, remember, feed, give your microbiome a diverse, nutrient-rich diet, move, support your health, digestion, elimination, and metabolic health. Protect, reduce the things that unnecessarily disrupt your gut and overall health. Feed, mood, protect. That's what I want you to start. Start with the foundations. And then, if you're still having symptoms and you're still not getting answers that you're looking for, it is time to ask better questions. Now, you might be thinking, okay, Ariana, I'm listening to you because I want to get pregnant. Exactly. That's why we're having this conversation. Because if you're trying to conceive, I don't want you to spend all your energy focusing on one part of the fertility equation while ignoring the rest of your health. I don't want you to look at the fertility test, see a smiley face, identify your fertile window, and think that is the entire fertility story. And I don't want you to think that your only choices are to keep trying in hopes it happens or jump straight into a procedure without understanding the bigger picture. And quite honestly, if you're trying to get pregnant, we want your body to be at its best health. I will make it a goal to get your body as healthy as possible going into pregnancy, because the foundation that you're going to have during this time is going to serve you so well in pregnancy and birth. If you're sitting there thinking, I have irregular cycles, I have PCOS, I struggle with insulin resistance, I've been bloated for years, I'm constantly constipated, my hair is shedding, I can't seem to lose weight, my cycle has changed, I know something isn't right, but I don't know what. These symptoms are information. And when you're trying to get pregnant, all this information matters and is relevant. Because the longer that you go without understanding what your body is showing you, the easier it is to keep treating fertility as a guessing game. So instead of only asking what is wrong with my fertility, I want you to start asking, what is my body showing me and what do I need to investigate? And more important, what should I do next? That is a completely different way of approaching fertility. And honestly, it is kind of the fertility education I wish every woman had before she felt like her only choices were to keep waiting or jump straight into a procedure. Because there is more that we can learn. There are patterns we can observe. There are questions we can ask, and there are health foundations we can address. There is fertility charting that can give us information about what is actually happening in your cycle. And there is appropriate medical evaluation when something needs to be investigated further. You don't need to choose between doing nothing or doing everything. You can start by understanding, and that's where I can help you. And if you're listening right now and thinking, this is me, I don't want to keep guessing, I want to invite you to book a discovery call with me, because maybe you already been trying to figure this out on your own. Maybe you read all the books, you change your diet, you track your period in an app, you have labs done. Maybe you even been told that everything looks normal, but you're still not pregnant. Or maybe you've been given a diagnosis, but you still don't understand why this is happening or what can you actually do about it. And you're sitting there thinking, there has to be more I can look at. This is exactly why I work with women one-on-one. My work is not simply teaching you how to chart your fertility. When we work together, we look at your fertility patterns, your cycle, your health history, the symptoms that you've been experiencing, the foundational areas that might be relevant to your fertility, including metabolic and whole body health. And when something needs further medical evaluation, I'm not here to diagnose you or replace your doctor. I'm here to help you recognize what might deserve a closer look, what questions to ask, and when it's time to bring those questions to the appropriate healthcare professional. Because I don't want you collecting more information. I want you to know what to do with the information you already have. That's the difference. If you're ready to stop guessing and instead understanding your fertility, book a discovery call with me. We'll talk about where you are right now, what you have already tried, what you're noticing in your body, and what you're hoping to change. And if we're a good fit, I can explain what working together over the 6 months can look and how can I support you through the process. While I can't promise you a pregnancy, and I won't, I can promise you that we're going to take your fertility seriously. The link to book your discovery call is in the show notes. You don't have to figure this out alone. We can do this together. Remember, you don't have to have all the answers today. There are still questions to ask, things to understand, and steps that you can take. I hope you'll join me for the next episode. Until then, take good care of yourself. Keep listening to what your body's telling you. I'll see you next time.
I'm my mama's little fertility helper. If this episode has helped you or if you feel a little more hopeful, leave a review. She'll love it.
Hi, DTC Warrior. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, please leave a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts. It truly helps to get this show into ears of more women who need it. And be sure to sign up for my weekly encouragement, tips, and insights straight to your inbox. I promise to keep it practical, hopeful, and faith-friendly. All right, I'm off to tacos, chocolate, and chart my cycle. I'll meet you back here next week. Bye.